pay the rates. We're trying to set a standard, a wage standard. So that's when you think about minimum wages, prevailing wages, things like that. So our next two speakers, first one going to come up is Amory Talercio, who is the president of the Regional Central New York Area Labor Federation, but she's also the president of Unite Here Local 150, representing hotel and restaurant workers in the area. And she's going to talk. You want Greg to go first? You're going to go together? And also Greg Lancette, who is the head of the president of the Central and Northern New York Building and Construction Trade Unions. And he's also head of the Plumbers Union locally, local Plumbers and Fitters, and I want to be offending, Local 267. Come on up.
Okay.
Thank you. Greg and I really have very similar things to talk about, so we thought it'd be best to talk together. But tonight, the most important thing you should take from tonight is two things. One is, whoever is up here, whatever union we represent, you just heard from 1199, they have health care. I have private sector, food service, hotels, hospitality. Greg has building trades, plumbers specifically. If a steel worker was up here, if a public sector person was up here, we all have the same stories to tell you. Because what unions provide in their most basic sense is access to the laws you all will be enacting. When I worked non-union, I had no access to any of the labor laws. I couldn't believe when I moved here and I worked at the Hotel Syracuse, I had access. I could say something. I could answer, in a polite way. I could discuss something with my employer and not get fired. So the two things you should take away as electeds and to be electeds is, number one, that all unions, no matter who's standing up here, have the same story to tell you. And it's always going to be about access to the actual laws we have in place in this country. So what I'm going to speak first about is minimum wage. And we had a very tough battle last year. And what we ended up getting in upstate New York was $9. We got 70 cents last December 31st to $9.70. This year there'll be another 70 cents to $10.40. And then $11.10, and it'll be going up to $12.50. Now, you've heard a lot of scary things from the employers, how they were going to lay everybody off and cut hours. They're hiring. They can't get enough people. Nobody. As a matter of fact, we're getting more money for more than the minimum wage workers. We're getting money for long-term. I just finished food service, and we're getting long-term people longevity increases that they wouldn't have gotten if the minimum wage didn't come up. So when it's in the law and they have to do it, it's amazing how they find the money to do it. It's not about taking from the public and raising rates, because it's still competitive. You go to a union hotel, it's the same price as a non-union hotel. So don't believe those stories. And you're going to hear later about the living wage. Same thing. When they enact a living wage, it just helps the community because the money goes directly back into the community. Minimum wage workers don't put the money in the bank to save it. They spend it. They don't buy a yacht down in Florida. They pay their water bill here. So that's why it's important to raise the minimum wage. And to remember, no employer would ever raise a wage if they didn't have to. And in the case of entry-level jobs, if they weren't forced to. And that's just fact. That's just fact. But I don't think I've heard of any massive layoffs from any of the other unions that are part of the AFL-CIO. But I just think we have more money in the pockets of individuals. Now the reason Greg and I...
Take your paper.
Okay, thank you. It's nice to have something to work. I'm not used to having support, I'm a one-person union. But the reason we came up together is because we both he utilizes project labor agreements, which you might hear about construction. Private sector utilizes labor peace agreements. Labor peace agreements usually operate by card check neutrality. What that means is, ahead of time, we negotiate how the union, and when the union is going to be able to enter the property and talk to the employees. In the private sector, they must hire the people first. And we just finished this at the Hotel Syracuse, and I don't think any of you heard about it, because that's exactly the purpose of a labor peace agreement. We have the right to talk to the people in a neutral atmosphere The employer doesn't hire high-priced attorneys to beat the union. The union doesn't set up picket lines or badmouth the employer, so business flows smoothly. It's almost 25 years ago that we organized the On Center. And I don't think any of you really knew about that either, because again, back then, we were able to do it on a handshake. I call it a handshake. We just asked the electeds, we asked Nick Pirro for support. And you know what? The company worked with us. We organized it, and today you have people still working there from 25 years ago, and they're making a better wage than if they work at a non-union place down the road. You have stability, and you have better benefits. So that come right back into the community. You have a solid workforce. So what we did at the On Center too was we agreed ahead of time how it was going to work. We were going to have access. Nobody was going to fight anybody. And then a simple card count, which means that when I approach the workers, we discuss what a union means. If they choose to sign a card to have my union represent them, we then take those cards, compare it to the employer's list, and if they have 50% plus one, they have a union. And then we have to go to battle for the first contract. So many times a union wins the first battle, but then loses the contract battle. Because if you let it delay, under normal conditions, they can delay so that they can decertify again after a year. So a labor peace agreement sets that all up, sets up a mediator who we're going to use to talk to each other should there be a problem, and sets up the rules ahead of time. And I'm happy to let you know, hopefully, I don't think you're going to hear about the Hotel Syracuse either, because that's proceeding well too.
You hang on to that. I'm okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
No.
Emery, you can hang on to that because you're coming back for the minimum wage, or the living wage and the minimum wage piece. So I'll just talk in the front. You're funny. So anyways, hey, like you were told by Doc Nave and Dennis and everything, this book actually illustrates all of our concerns and all of our positions on various topics. So if there's one thing that you walk away with tonight and you actually pick up and read tomorrow, it's this, please. This really means everything to us. Project labor agreements, like Amory was talking about, labor peace agreements, totally separate. Project labor agreements are actually for the construction before Amory's hotel is built, or a restaurant or any of that. And typically what that is, there's 17 different trades that work in a construction project. What the project labor agreement does is it actually brings the working rules and a lot of the overtime triggers and job site and project conditions together under one set of rules. Every customer actually has different desires and needs. An example, 5-6 years ago, we did the airport renovation for the security, the new passenger terminal and all that. They had some goals and desires that they wanted to achieve then during a PLA. Now we have a PLA for the future renovation that's right around the corner that has different goals and desires. Syracuse School District Phase 1, there were goals, desires by the district, looking for target, city participation, things like that. It was tailored into that agreement. The second phase of the school district is underway. It's just beginning, but that's a totally different agreement also that has additional requests or additional evolutionary needs and desires from the customer. And the one thing I will apologize for, if any of you drive on 690, sorry, that's us too. We're working really hard trying to get that thing back in shape, and it's going to be a lot better when it's done. But I'll apologize in advance. So government, municipalities, a lot of different agencies have been electing to use project labor agreements. What they do is they have an engineering firm perform a feasibility study to basically put together a wish list of concessions, and by commingling work rules and overtime triggers and things like that, it actually does project savings, and it usually brings a faster delivery model to that. Amphitheater, whether you wanted it or not, that thing, from the day they broke ground on that first scoop of dirt, 151 days later, a $51 million amphitheater is over there with some pretty good show. It's got a pretty good view when it's not cloudy out also. Beautiful on the lake. Things like that. So project delivery, cost savings, and what that equates to public entities and also our private customers it allows them to do more with the original money that they had set aside. If they're doing $300 million of work on an upcoming school district renovation, out on the street, bid separately with just regular municipal law and prevailing rate applied to that, it's a $300 million job. But with the potential stars lining up, so to speak, and all the projects being able to move forward under the one agreement, you actually may be able to do a $330 million worth of work for that same $300 million. A lot of municipalities roll the savings into additional work or they expand the scope. There's certain things that they maybe wanted to do, couldn't do initially, but then they find out they can actually get that done and squeak that stuff in under the radar and all of that. Back to you, Anne Marie. Uh-oh.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you have the sheet? Do you need a sheet?
I lived all these issues, as many of you know, so.
Okay.
Living wage, the same issue. When we started living wage, when do you want me to use the mic?
Yeah, basically, Lancett's got a loud mouth, is what she said.
Maybe to the construction guy, always got something to say, big mouth. Size 6 chest, size 3 hard hat.
But wages, again, we go back to the same thing. It's all about what the law is. And unfortunately, it takes unions to enforce the law. And Greg's people might go out on job sites to make sure that people are even getting paid, that the employer's paying the taxes, that they're actually paying disability and everything all the good employers have to pay. So it's always the same story. We're kind of the watchdogs. When you hear negative things about unions, please don't ever believe anything. Because I always say this, I didn't go to school for this. I went to work, I changed jobs, I did go to school, but I didn't take unionism. And I came out of a strike, and the reason I do what I do is because I see what goes on. I was a little afraid I wouldn't be tough enough to fight for employees, but you know what? The employers, like we're going through now, you know, in some levels of our government, what they will do for 5 cents. So when it comes to wages, we all need to make good wages. All we want to do is feed our family, get to work. We don't want handouts. Nobody wants handouts. They want to earn enough money to do what we call living. Paying our rent, insurance, transportation, that's all we want. So it sounds so simple, and employers need employees, right? Otherwise they'll be out of business. Who creates the wealth but the employees? And yet it's not that simple. So the laws are really important, and when we started the minimum wage fight, which I believe, Mark, was 1999?
The living wage?
The first living wage fight?
Well, first one, 2003.
2003. The problem was the minimum wage had not been coming up. And I just heard a recent statistic from United Way that for a family of 4 to live in a decent home, etc., get to work, get to school, it's $60,000 in Onondaga County for a family of 4. That's a lot of jobs. So most of my people, and probably Mark's people, work 2 and 3 jobs, and county, and and our public sector. Everybody works 2 and 3 jobs because we have usually one family member working 2 jobs and the other one working 1 job, so that somebody can manage the household. So the minimum wage hadn't gone up too much, hadn't gone up at all. You know how long it's been, and that's why now it's such a drastic jump. But we learned about the living wage. And the living wage is, again, very specific. What it takes to live in a particular area for transportation, modest, when I say home, it could be, an apartment, whatever, a modest place to live, medical, and getting to work. And the Fiscal Policy Institute is what did the research back then and continues to do the research. So when you see that the living wage without medical provided by the employer is $15.23.
Yeah, it's in the booklet.
It's in the booklet under living wage, and that's the living wage, what it takes to live a very modest life here in Onondaga County. It's not a New York City number. It's not a California number, it's an Onondaga County number. So it's important for you to realize that. And that's also based on working full-time. Without a union, what employers do, it's true, is hire part-time people to create a full-time full-time schedule. With unions, we're lucky we have seniority and we have those provisions that protect the workers. But living wage is based on and it goes up every year based on the cost of living in that area. So I think that's what's important. It took us 12 years to get it fully adapted into our area. And we cover anyone who, it's over 20, if it's an agreement with the city that is over 20,000 a year, and there were provisions originally for not-for-profits to move into it, and it's been, right now, as I said, it's 1523, and I think it doesn't even, it applies to maybe 100 people.
There it is.
Yeah, it goes up, so that's the basics. If anybody, but it was a campaign, again, and that's when we did a lot of the research that we found out that, no, workers don't get laid off, no, businesses don't close up. None of that's true. The money just comes back into the community and helps the community.
So, jumping on that with Anne-Marie, don't read my body language because I just gave Anne-Marie one of those. It's not it. I was tapping on my watch, kind of missed that one, but that's okay. Totally good. The prevailing rate in the construction industry that comes out of municipal contracts, is that the louder?
Be louder, please.
Okay. So municipalities are required to pay prevailing rate, and really that's set by the New York State Department of Labor, and it takes a couple of factors in. Without beating you all to death on it, it is right here in your book. But I will tell you this, tying it back, prevailing rate, back to project labor agreements. Project labor agreements actually, the workers all make prevailing rate on the work, of course, but what it also does, it ensures a local workforce. You know, prevailing rate absent a project labor agreement, you could have the right qualified bidder come in with the right qualified price, they could have all the right criteria, but they could also bring their workforce from wherever. Out of state, out of town, some cases, multiple states. That goes on a lot in construction. It's kind of hit and run. But with the PLAs, it basically ensures that the members are earning their wages are from here, they're earning their benefits here, they're spending their benefit money, whether it's health care or their retirement income, here in our community, where it's all generated from. So from the trade standpoint, we always have a big deal about hire local labor. You've heard about buy local, my local, the food producers, same thing. If you're hiring a workforce, hire our own. If our taxpayers are going to pay for a project, they want to benefit the most workers here, where we pay our taxes and where we live and go to school. It's really that simple. That is all here in the book. The Gslc law is a procurement law. It's a municipal law that's required, municipalities are required to contract construction projects in central New York that are over $500,000, which is a lot of them, it's not all of them. And it breaks it down into 4 prime contracts. The general contracting, the electrical contract, the plumbing, and the HVAC contract, which I give my left arm for some HVAC in this room tonight. But so what that does is, those are public bid openings on bid day. The envelope comes in to the municipal office, open it up, room full of people, read the prices. Lowest responsible bidder on bid day gets the job. It prevents a bunch of job shopping, bid rigging, a bunch of the games that go on that actually sometimes end up giving a customer who's paying the bill a lower quality product that doesn't live as long as it's supposed to. Because when the job shopping goes on and all of that, typically the owner, they still pay the same money, but they're getting less in material. They have to pay the labor rate, so where they have to rob Peter to pay Paul, you know, they're already gone by the time your project's falling apart and you have to build it again or replace it earlier. Anne-Marie talked on the living wage. Thank you. I know you did a good job, but I think we're done on this portion, aren't we?
Yes, you are.
Very good. So if anybody has any questions, we'll be over here. Doug, you have your hand up?
So first, I'm curious,
in terms of the number of people unionized in the county, for example, has gone up or gone down the last 20 years. In addition, like hotels, how do I know if they're unionized or not? I mean, how do I find that out?
What you do, actually, we have My International has an app if you're traveling that you can actually go to. Here locally, you have to call either the Area Labor Federation or myself.
So it's not easy to find out then.
Well, just call the office. Wendy has a list.
It's on the website.
So, yeah, it's also on our website.
They might like you, so you can't call them.
We're the world's best kept secret. That's why we're having everybody come.
And the first question, I believe, thanks to a lot of organizing by 1199 and everybody else, but I know, I always think about our healthcare, which has grown.
Mhm. Well, I mean, the numbers are.
Years, it was
I mean,
wrong.
yeah, I mean, well, I mean, the numbers overall are kind of stable. What I would say is that the nature of the workforce has changed. Like when I started with the Labor Council back in 1998, there was a lot more industrial unions. And now there are very few industrial unions. But the public sector in the service industry, those are the ones that have grown. But so the overall aggregate number has stayed the same, but the nature of it has changed a lot.
That's a good answer.
Well, thank you.
For some reason, people now seem to think union is not important. You don't need unions, you know?
Well, what I would say to that is thank you all of you for being here tonight, because obviously you see there's value in our endorsement. So, but you are right, and I always say that our biggest challenge is ratio algebra. That it's a kind of anti-collective. You can do it on your own. You can pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, regardless if you have boots or not.
I had a 30-year-old telling me just over the weekend that unions were really good back in the 80s, but you really don't need them anymore. And I'm like, back in the 80s? Like, are you kidding me? So, but anyways, but yeah.
that made
so,
me feel old too.
Yeah, the years and years of that kind of mentality in the campaigning, I understand. And those of you in this room that don't belong to a union, I understand too, because while we're telling you our stories, you're doing a tangible equation in your own head of how it fits in you. We all have that crazy uncle that might have worked at a union place. I won't even pick on an industry or anything. He'd sit around and say, yeah, I don't even have to go to work tomorrow after Thanksgiving. It's one of my 300 paid holidays. Ah, good luck. It's not like that. It never really was like that. And that crazy uncle you had, he should have shut up. He really had to go to work.